Bible. One story, filled with stories, all meant to make a difference with our story. Today we'd like to look at a story. It might be very fitting to watch it maybe on a Good Friday sometime. But it wouldn't have to be on a Good Friday. Any day that we revisit this story, I believe it has the potential. No, it doesn't. The author, the inspirer of this story, filled with stories, can make an eternal impact on our story. We're not in a professional studio. Who knows what's going to happen in the next few moments. We have taken and one side of our living room. Thank you, dear. Just want to use that simple robe today. As I slip into this robe, I'll slip into a character that we meet in this story from the story. Now, this story is actually found, or this person is mentioned in 3 different places within the story. In Matthew, about 27, Mark 15, Luke 23. If I'm off a little bit, you'll find it in that vicinity. Give me a moment to slip into this robe. As I do, I'll slip into a character that we meet from this story, and then we'll get in with the rest of our story. I just feel nudged to pray. Lead us, guide us, you who are the story, bring this story from your story alive in such a way that impacts our story, each of our stories, in the way it needs to today. Thank you. Take a moment to continue that prayer. As you do, I'll slip into the robe. When I start to share again, it'll be from the viewpoint of our friend from this story. Honestly, I'm not sure how much I slept that night. I was so excited, so excited. I was near the end of a journey. You know how you feel like when you've traveled so far and you're almost there, your destination. But my journey wasn't just that of miles. It was of years. It was a quest, really. Somewhere along the way, I'd begun to be aware that there was emptiness in me that couldn't be filled with good, rich stuff like family and even my faith. It couldn't be filled with the cheaper things of life like money. My business had done well. None of that filled that. There was an emptiness there that I longed for it to be filled. And so finally, I'm not sure where the seed of an idea began to grow in my mind. If I could just go to the central city of our faith, Jerusalem, and could be there at the time, the central event, one of the central events of our story, the story of our people. If I could be there around Passover, then somehow or another, my quest would find an answer there. So I'd set out saying goodbye to my lovely bride, my 2 sons. May I come back to them a more whole person than what left. I was so excited, and I had planned. I couldn't hardly believe it. I was under the sky that David had slept under, that he was a part of, and I'd intentionally planned. My Passover meal was just he and me held under the stars. That's the way I wanted it. But now today, if my calculations were right, I would enter the city of David. I was so excited. So I packed up my stuff and started heading to the city. I remember turning the corner for the first time, seeing there on the hill, wondering maybe David himself had stood here, others had stood there through the years. Prophets, persons like myself. I was enough. And so I began to move on towards the city. As I began to move up and towards the city, I noticed coming out of one of the gates of the city, it was a parade. And I thought, well, it's part of the festival. Surely they're acknowledging and celebrating when our ancestors moved from Egypt into and began to move towards the land of promise, this land. And so I wanted to get in on everything I could right away. So I moved towards where they were. And it wasn't until I got closer I realized it wasn't a parade of celebrating life, victory, celebration, freedom. It was a parade of death. Wherever the Romans were, there were parades like this. It was, I could see them scattered through those that were in this parade. And I could see even from a distance, there was scattered 1, 2, maybe 3 that was being taken up to be executed for whatever crimes. But before I could go on, there was one of the prisoners that there was something about him that there was something, and so I tried to get closer as I did. I noticed there was something on his head. I couldn't see what it was. I got even closer. Someone had taken a branch of a thorn bush or tree and made it some sort of cap and pressed it down. And I couldn't see what else, but it seemed like so much attention around it. And so I moved myself to the front of this group of people that lined this way of this death parade. And again, this one just particularly caught my eye. There was something about him as he was carrying that crossbeam up for his death. Something about him. And I was so curious. And before I could go on, I knew I had to find out. So I was just turning to ask someone who was in this group of people when in the corner of my eye, consciousness, this one who I was concerned about stumbled and fell. And I could hear this Roman soldier, hey, get that one over there to help. And before I could get my question out, I felt the firm hand of the Roman soldier on my, pulling me around. He wanted me. And I looked at the soldiers and I could tell that they weren't in a way of argument. So, okay, you don't argue with the Romans. So I bent down to pick up the crossbeam he had dropped. As I did, I didn't intend to, but as I did, my eyes lifted up and my eyes met his. And it wasn't what I expected. I expected to see like a crazed animal, ready to die, ready to meet its end. No, not the hard eyes of a criminal. Soft, tender eyes. Eyes of appreciation, eyes that didn't match where he was. The cap of thorns, a crossbeam. About then I felt the blunt end of a spear and knew the Romans were saying, get a move on if you don't want the other end of the spear. Okay. So I brought the crossbeam, the help of a couple of those soldiers up to my back, and I fell in behind him. As I fell in behind him, I noticed his back for the first time. I'd seen a back like that one time. My dad wanted to deter me from a life of crime, had taken me down to where a criminal was being scourged with a whip until the flesh rot. Oh, I can't describe it to you. I won't describe it to you. Sickening. What is this man who'd been so severely treated? His face, a bloody mess, beaten with fists. Who, what? I didn't know. As I fell in behind this, I had more questions than I ever had. And I was just kind of lost in that moment, trying to figure things out. And before I knew it, we were where we must have been going, because the Roman soldiers said, throw it down and get out of here. I threw it down, and I tried to get out, tried to leave. I stumbled off. I asked a few questions, found the place I'd arranged for my lodgings, threw my stuff that someone had been kind enough to carry for me. I left it there, though, because I had to go back. You see, I came for answers to questions, but now I had more questions than I ever did, and I couldn't leave without. I knew there was where my questions could be answered, maybe. So I went back to that place. By the time I got there, they had the 3 of them, spikes driven through the lower part of their palms, through their feet, hung up on those crosses. he, who I was curious about, he was on the center cross. Somehow not appropriate. It seemed like he was the center of most everything that happened there that day. That's when I noticed the sign written in the major languages of our day: Aramaic, Latin, Greek, King of the. I knew that they, whoever they were, meant that to be a jab, to be facetious, sarcastic. But again, it seemed like another, if there was anyone who was in charge of the circling, it was like a whirlwind, but he was the center of it all on that day. So much went on, so much went on. Well, the first thing I noticed was the derision, the venom that was being spit his way. Even from those that were on either side of him, venom spit his way. It was like they were taking their pain and putting it over on him. It was like those going by, even with their religious robes, were pouring out their venom on him. Hey, you helped others, now help yourself. Hey, you who were going to, hey, the temple rebuilt, tore down, and rebuilt in 3 days. Come on, help. Such venom from them. And I expect any moment venom to spit back out of him. I can't be sure, as I kind of found my place. This drama, I guess because I'd done what I did, I was allowed a place pretty close. They just kind of overlooked me. And as I found my place, in the face of all that venom, instead he looked up to the heaven, and I won't swear to this, but there was something about forgive? No, surely not. And then in the swirl of the moment, I began to notice that there was kind of a rhythm to what was going on all around me as people, as the flies were buzzing around and biting at them as I smelled the blood. It was just. I just was trying to get my orientation of what was around and what was going on. And then I heard him shout out, your mother, take care of her, as if she is your mother. Your son, no. He was talking, and I realized his mother was having to watch this. No. And then I began to realize not only them, but I began to look around and realize that there were others scattered throughout the crowd that weren't happy about this, sad about this, befuddled about this. There had been those women on the way up that were crying and weeping, and he had said something to them. Like there were others that were sympathetic to him, but they were kind of hidden in and scattered in among whoever they. And as I was noticing and watching just the Romans and what they were doing, they and what they were doing, I kind of lost track of him for the moment. And then I realized as one shouted out, the one that was hanging by him, and not in derision this time, but shouted out to this one from the one on the cross to the one on the center cross, remember me when you come into your kingdom. He's gone crazy, the pain. He's believing what the sign has said. And then he yelled again, hey, you! His other one, shut up, don't you see we deserve where we are? He has done nothing. And again he said, please allow me to go with me even to your kingdom. And I thought it's great. And then he spoke to him. Today you'll be with me in paradise. My God, you're as far from paradise as anyone could ever be. No, but that's when I noticed his eyes again. His eyes, so calm in the swirl of the storm all around him. His eyes, so calm. And that's where I began to just get lost in what was going on with him. Those eyes, so calm, but yet they seemed to start to cloud up. And I realized I had to get closer and closer to see what was going on. As I got closer and closer, I began to realize part of what was going on is that it was getting darker. It's like, this must be only midday, and it's almost as dark as night. It's like a gathering storm. His eyes are just collecting the darkness and reflecting the darkness of the storm. And I had this crazy thought. that nature is reflecting the darkness that's beginning to reflect in his eyes. And there was pain. Yeah, sure, the pain of body. As I began to realize there was such pain, and there was a rhythm in that pain as I got closer and closer. I began to realize with all of them, certainly with him, to get breath, he had to push up to get breath in his lungs. But the pain in his feet would be against that spike was too much, and he'd have to let down. He'd let the breath out, and then he'd get another breath. And then, I was only a few feet away from him now. The pain began to seep into his soul. His eyes reflect this pain. I began to realize every time he went up and down, his back rubbed against the roughness of that cross. His back, remember, his back was so pain. But it wasn't just physical pain now. There was something seeping into his soul. There was something, I didn't know if it was like I was being pulled towards it or into it. And then he pushed up. And he looked up into the heavens and he screamed, "My God! My God! Why hast thou forsaken me?" As he cried it out. How many times did I cry that out? Not daring to speak those words in the middle of the night. I tried to be a good man. I tried to be a good husband and dad. I tried to be a good follower of the Lord God Yahweh. I tried. But there still seemed to be, and it is so many nights, my heart cried, "My God, why are you? Why are you?" And it was in those moments. I don't know if I can ever explain this to you. It was like I was drawn into him, or he was drawn into me, and I just got lost. For a time, I just got lost. I got lost. As it's like my pain was drawn up into his pain into mine. And I don't know how much time went by. I'm just not sure how much time went by until he finally pushed up, and through a tongue that was beginning to swell, lips were beginning to swell, he spoke out, "Thirst." One of the soldiers who had been busy gabbling for something over here, I couldn't tell what, got a stick and put some sort of sponge on, dipped it in something, put it to his lips. He dabbed it, and he kept up the rhythm, dabbed down. And he pushed up, he looked up into the heavens and cried out, "It is finished." I'd heard those words. I'd gone to the games where the wrestlers wrestled, the runners would run, and many times when they had their foot on their opponent or when they crossed the finish tape, they would cry out, "It is finished." They would cry that out in victory. This cry was a cry of victory from here. I don't know. He pushed up again. I'm not sure what he said. Something to the heavens. I'm not sure. He dropped down, and I'm waiting for him to push himself back up. But he didn't. Somehow or another, even then, I got the idea they didn't take his life. He gave it. Isn't that crazy? I stumbled away from there in the gathering storm. Stumbled back to where my belongings were left. They put some food in front of me and I picked at it. No appetite. Went to bed that night, tossed and turned and tossed and turned. I came for answers, but now I had more questions. Who was this one on the center cross? Who was he? I'm trying to make sense of all this against the backdrop of my restless heart. And I remember crying out to God, "Oh God, please help me." In that moment, words that I had read, I don't know how many times from the scroll of Isaiah. "Surely our griefs he himself bore, our sorrows he carried. Yet we esteemed him stricken of God and afflicted. He was pierced through for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. The punishment for our well-being fell upon him, and by his scourging we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. All of us have gone the iniquity of us all to fall upon you. I don't know if I can explain it to you. In that moment, I knew. I didn't know how yet, but I knew. The answers to my searching, the answers to my questions, the answers to that ache in my soul was in Him. And again, I can't explain it to you, but in that moment there was a shalom, a peace that came over my soul for the first time I ever saw. And I knew the answer to my quest was in Him, this one on the center cross. I didn't know how yet, because I went into a peaceful sleep that night. In my heart of hearts, I knew. I was determined the next day to go find out how, why, who. He was my answer, the answer. I was sure. It was in that man, that one on the center cross. I know it. No sermons, I promise. I encourage you to take a journal, take some paper, and write down your thoughts, having taken this journey. One word I would journal. It's a word that my brother, I tempt to be used of God to paint with words. He was one who could paint that way, but he also had a way of painting with the acrylics. Is that okay? You see that? I know there's reflection there. Had a way of capturing it, didn't he? Yeah. He wrote one word down here. It's the word that He demonstrated His love. He demonstrated His love towards us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. For God so, what's the word He wrote? Love. May that word continue to seep into me and you as we look at this image, either in painting or by words. However, this man on the center